Hello, and welcome to Overthinking Eurovision Looks Back. I'm Matt Rather. When we look back at 1974, a lot of the music feels hopelessly dated. The #1 song of the year was Barbra Streisand's The Way We Were. And although it makes me cry in the shower every single time, they don't write them like that anymore. ABBA, on the other hand, has arguably never been more influential than today, and a lot of ABBA's defining characteristics were right there in Waterloo. Mark Lee, our resident pop historian, has the story.
Hey guys, Mark Lee here, and it's time to talk about ABBA's legacy. Sure, they had an S-tier gift for melody, but that wasn't what made them unique. And while it's true the key to their sound was the mixing of the two female voices, that wasn't something that was widely copied. But we count 5 aspects of ABBA that changed pop forever. Number 1, female emotional complexity. Even in a happy, straightforward track like Waterloo, they still capture the interesting dynamic of a woman falling in love with someone she didn't want to fall in love with. A lot of ABBA songs deal with messy adult relationships, with their singers not entirely thrilled about their feelings or sure about what they want. Mamma Mia is kind of a twisted song about someone who can't escape from a toxic relationship, but it's so much fun you barely notice. But it's not just that the songs have melodrama. The women are always the lead singers, and that was rare in pop at the time. In 2018, the chief film critic of Variety wrote that it was ABBA, and ABBA alone, who transformed the intricacies of feminine passion and yearning into an ecstatically sustained and larger-than-life pop opera. The article also raises the interesting idea that ABBA's female singers are why the group had trouble winning over male 1970s music critics and getting the respect it deserved. Maybe Britney, Madonna, and the other divas from the 80s and 90s owe a debt to ABBA. Number 2, lavish production. Audio engineer Michael Tretow is just as responsible for the ABBA sound as any of the 4 band members. When the band was admitted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2010, the Hall's official essay noted, it was Tretow who masterminded ABBA's answer to Philip Spector's Wall of Sound, whipping up a many-tiered wedding cake of sound, bunted with rich vocal cascades and iced by deliciously echoed instrumental flourishes. And a lot of Tretow's sonic innovations in the mid-70s went on to become widespread.
Då var det ABBA-soundet, ja, men nu så gör man så. Det är så man gör när man gör en kör om man vill att det ska låta stort och tätt och sådär. Så att många av de där grejerna som vi då gjorde nu, det hör till att det är så man jobbar. Va?
Number 3, interesting chord progressions. It's easy to miss because the hooks are such earworms, but ABBA songs went way beyond the simple 4 chord progressions that defined pop at the time. Consider Waterloo. It starts with a D chord and then immediately goes to an E chord. Before the key has even been established, there's some uncertainty there. And this heightens anticipation for the chorus, which gives us the resolution. The New Yorker did a profile of Swedish producer Max Martin in 2015, and they drew a direct line between ABBA's chord progressions and Martin's work for the Backstreet Boys 25 years later. Like many of ABBA's tunes, these Backstreet Boys songs use major and minor chords in surprising combinations, going to a minor chord on the chorus, say, when you least expect it, producing happy songs that sound sad and sad songs that make you happy. And of course, Max Martin continues to make hits for artists like The Weeknd, Ariana Grande, and BTS. So that ABBA DNA is still topping the charts. Number 4, style. Eurovision's glorious history of iconic costumes really started with ABBA in 1974. According to Vogue Scandinavia, Frida discovered the now classic white jacket with metallic chains at Stockholm store Green Clouds and Blue Grass. Inger Svennicke, sometimes referred to as Scandinavia's answer to Vivienne Westwood, was head designer at the shop at the time, and it was she who was commissioned to create the rest of the band's clothes for the Eurovision final. By bringing glam rock style to the ESC stage, ABBA changed the idea of how pop could look. And acts like Lady Gaga and Dua Lipa are still making themselves into art. Finally, ABBA gave the world Swedish pop. When ABBA competed in Eurovision, it was out of desperation. Years later, Bjorn recalled, "We weren't particularly happy about being launched as a Eurovision group, but at the time, it was virtually our only chance to reach outside Sweden. Being a Swedish group meant that no one would listen to you." I don't want to actually Bjorn, but I have to point out that on the day of Eurovision 1974, a Swedish band was #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Still, ABBA kicked down the door and introduced Swedish pop to the world in a big way, and now it's one of the nation's biggest exports. Sweden is the third largest supplier of pop music in the world after the US and the UK. And Sweden absolutely dominates when it comes to Eurovision songwriting. In 2016, a quarter of all the songs in Eurovision were written or co-written by Swedes.
No puzzle this time, abolitionists. I'm done hiding, and I have a plan to defeat the avatars. Click the link on the upper right-hand corner, and let's do this.
If you want to fully appreciate the musical legacy of ABBA, just look at the biggest pop star on the planet. Anti-Hero is a very ABBA song, and you don't have to take my word for it. In their review of Midnights, the Daily Mail newspaper called Anti-Hero an ABBA-esque track. In fact, I think we can ID a lot of ABBA qualities in there. All that anti-hero self-doubt and self-criticism is very ABBA, especially when it's paired with an upbeat, danceable track. The way she's harmonizing with herself in the choruses feels like one of those ABBA wedding cakes of sound we talked about. As for the chord progression, it's not as complex, but there is something interesting going on here. It starts on the 4 chord instead of the 1, which gives the song a sense of dislocation and uncertainty, in keeping with the overall message of the song. Style-wise, Anti-Hero actually features some very 1970s looks. I'm not saying it was a deliberate ABBA homage, but I can't rule it out. As for Swedish songwriters, well, okay, there isn't one on this track. But I think it's striking that the new album actually sounds more Swedish than the songs Taylor wrote alongside Max Martin. Certainly, we know her current co-writer Jack Antonoff is an ABBA fan.
There's one more way ABBA changed the music world forever. It gave the Eurovision Song Contest credibility. Benny and Bjorn spent 5 years trying to make it to Eurovision because they were convinced it could be a launching pad to global fame. And they were right, beyond their wildest dreams. After that night 50 years ago, ABBA has remained central to our idea of what Eurovision is. And the band's example has inspired generations of artists to try out for the contest. Because even though very few Eurovision winners ever achieve global success, nobody can say that it's impossible. We'll see you next time. Taylor is coming to Stockholm on May 17th. What are the odds one or more members of ABBA make an appearance at the show? Come on, guys, do it to make your granddaughters happy.